The sun rose over the village of Oak Arrow, but it brought no comfort. The dry season had stretched into its 8th month. Wells had run empty. Streams had turned to dust. Children cried for water that no longer came. But in one compound something strange was happening. Amara's compound always had water. Her garden stayed green while others turned brown. Her clay pots were always full, always fresh, always cool to the touch. People whispered as they passed her gate. Some looked with envy. Others looked with fear. That morning, voices grew loud near the village square. A group of women stood arguing, their faces twisted with anger and confusion. "How does she have water when the rest of us are dying of thirst?" one woman shouted. "It's not natural," another hissed. "The river dried up months ago. The wells are empty. So where is her water coming from?" An older man shook his head slowly. "There's something dark about that woman. Mark my words." The crowd grew larger. Fingers pointed toward Amara's distant compound. Suspicion hung in the air like smoke. And in the shadows, someone smiled coldly, watching it all unfold. By midday, the entire village had gathered in the square. Amara stood in the center, her head lowered, her hands folded calmly in front of her. The chief elder raised his staff for silence. "Amara," he said slowly, "the people want answers. Your compound has water while theirs do not. Explain yourself." Amara looked up. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried a deep sadness. She said nothing. "Speak, woman," a voice shouted from the crowd. Still Amara remained silent. The murmuring grew louder. Anger rippled through the gathered villagers like a wave. "She's hiding something," someone yelled. "She's using witchcraft," another accused. A tall woman stepped forward from the crowd. Her name was Nena. She was beautiful, proud, and her eyes burned with barely hidden rage. "Elders," Nena said sweetly, though her voice dripped with poison, "I have watched Amara for years. She moves at strange hours. She whispers to the wind. And now, mysteriously, she has what none of us do." The crowd gasped. Nena pointed a long finger at Amara. "I will find out her secret. And when I do, this village will know the truth." Amara's eyes met Nena's for just a moment. Then she turned and walked away in silence. Nena returned to her small hut, her heart pounding with fury. She sat on her mat and stared at the cracked walls around her. "Always Amara," she whispered bitterly. "Always her." Since they were children, Amara had been the favorite. The elders praised her kindness. The young men admired her beauty. Even the spirits seemed to bless her footsteps. And Nena, she was always second, always overlooked, always in the shadow. "Not anymore," she hissed. She remembered how the village had once offered Amara the role of priestess. Nena had wanted it desperately, but they chose Amara instead. Amara who refused it. Amara who said she was unworthy. "Unworthy," Nena spat. "Yet you walk with water while we thirst." Her mind raced. If Amara had a secret source of power, Nena would take it. She would expose her. She would become the one the village looked to for answers. She stood and walked to her door, looking out at the darkening sky. "Tonight," she whispered. "I will follow her tonight." And as the moon began to rise, Nena's plan took shape in the shadows. Midnight came slowly. The village was silent except for the chirping of crickets and the distant call of an owl. Nena crouched behind a cluster of bushes near Amara's compound. Her breathing was shallow. Her eyes were sharp. Then she saw her. Amara stepped out of her hut, dressed in a simple white wrapper. In her hands, she carried a large clay pot, empty and clean. She did not carry a lamp. She did not look around. She simply walked, her feet moving silently across the dry earth. Nena's heart raced. She waited until Amara had moved far ahead. Then she followed, keeping low, keeping quiet. The path led away from the village, toward the old forest where no one dared to go at night. The trees loomed tall and dark. The air grew colder. Still Amara walked. Nena's hands trembled. Fear crept into her chest, but greed pushed her forward. Suddenly Amara stopped. Nena froze, pressing herself against a tree. And then she heard it, soft footsteps. Not hers. Not Amara's. Someone else was following too. Amara stood at the edge of the dry riverbed. The moonlight spilled over the cracked earth like silver paint. Once, this place had been full of life. Now it was nothing but dust and memory. She knelt slowly, placing the clay pot on the ground in front of her. Nena watched from the shadows, her breath caught in her throat. Behind another tree, a second figure crouched low, a young man named Chaik, who had also followed Amara out of curiosity. Amara closed her eyes and tilted her head toward the sky. Her lips began to move. First no sound came. Then, softly, a chant rose from her throat. It was not a language Nena recognized. The words were old, ancient, like the voice of the earth itself. The air around them grew heavy. The wind stopped completely. Nena's skin prickled with fear. Amara's voice grew stronger. She raised her hands and pressed them into the dry ground. The earth beneath her fingers began to tremble. Nena gasped silently. Chaik's eyes widened in terror. And then something impossible happened. Where there had been only dust, a faint shimmer appeared. Water. Just a few drops at first, glistening in the moonlight. Amara's chant continued, steady and sure. The question burned in Nena's mind. Where is this water coming from? The drops became a trickle. The trickle became a stream. Clear, cold water began to pool in the cracked riverbed, glowing faintly under the moon. Amara leaned forward, her hands still pressed into the earth. Her body shook. Sweat dripped from her brow despite the cool night air. Nena stared, unable to move. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared Amara might hear it. Then, something shifted beneath the ground. Shadow. Dark and vast. It moved like smoke beneath the surface of the water, twisting, rising. Chaik's breath hitched. His body went rigid. The shadow took shape, something ancient, something powerful. It had no face, but Nena felt its gaze. Cold. Piercing. Unforgiving. Chaik stumbled backward, his foot snapping a dry branch. The sound echoed like thunder. The shadow turned. Chaik's eyes rolled back. His body went limp. He collapsed to the ground without a sound. Nena clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. Her legs trembled violently. She wanted to run, but terror had frozen her in place. Amara did not turn. She did not stop chanting. The clay pot began to fill. Slowly, steadily. Water poured into it as if from an invisible spring. And the shadow sank back into the earth, disappearing as silently as it had come. Years earlier, when Amara was just a girl, the village had been dying. The rains had stopped. The land had turned to dust. Elders prayed to the ancestors, but the sky remained silent. One night, young Amara could not sleep. She heard the cries of mothers whose children were dying of thirst. She heard the despair in her father's voice as he begged the heavens for mercy. So she did what no one else dared. She walked alone into the sacred forest. She knelt at the dry riverbed and wept. "Please," she cried. "If any spirit hears me, please save my people. I will give anything. Just let them live." The wind stopped. The earth trembled. And from the ground a voice rose, deep, old, and heavy with power. "You offer anything, child." Amara looked up, trembling. "Yes. Then I will give you water," the spirit said. "But every drop you take will cost you your strength, or youth, your very life." Amara's tears fell faster. "And if I refuse, your people will perish." She closed her eyes. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "I accept." The earth split open and water began to flow. The spirit's voice echoed in her mind. "Each time you call me, you will lose a piece of yourself. Your beauty will fade. Your body will weaken. And one day, the water will take the last of you." Amara had nodded, even as fear gripped her heart. "But you must never tell anyone," the spirit continued. "If you speak of this covenant, You will die that very night. Silence is your shield. Break it, and the shield shatters. Amara had agreed. What choice did she have? From that night on, she carried water to her compound in secret. She shared it quietly with her family, then with neighbors who asked. She never explained. She never boasted. And every time she returned to the riverbed, she felt the price. Her skin, once smooth, began to show faint lines. Her hair, once thick and black, grew dull. Her body, once strong, tired more easily. But the village survived. Children drank. Mothers cooked. Gardens grew. And Amara said nothing. She bore the weight alone, night after night, month after month, year after year. Because silence was not just her shield. It was her sacrifice. And now, as she knelt by the riverbed once more, she whispered to the spirit, I am still here. I am still willing. Amara had wanted to tell someone. So many times she had wanted to scream the truth. When the elders accused her of witchcraft, she wanted to defend herself. When Nena's jealous eyes followed her, she wanted to explain. When her own mother looked at her with confusion and worry, she wanted to weep in her arms and confess everything. But the spirit's warning was absolute. Speak and you die. So Amara learned to live in loneliness. She smiled when people whispered. She lowered her head when they accused. She carried the weight of their suspicion because it was lighter than death. At night, she would sit alone in her hut and stare at her hands. They were thinner now, the veins more visible. Her reflection in the water showed a woman older than her years. This is the price, she whispered to herself. This is love. She thought of the children who drank the water she brought. She thought of the mothers who no longer wept. She thought of the village that would have been dust without her sacrifice. And she chose silence again. Because some truths are too dangerous to speak. Some love is too deep for words. Her secret was a prison. But it was also her purpose. Nena watched from behind the tree, her heart pounding. She had seen everything. The chant, the shadow, the water appearing from nothing. And now, as Amara lifted the full pot onto her head and began walking back toward the village, Nena's fear transformed into something else. Greed. So that's her secret, Nena whispered, her lips curling into a smile. A spirit. Covenant. Power. She did not think about sacrifice. She did not think about the cost. She thought only of what she could gain. If Amara could call water from the earth, so could she. If Amara could command a spirit, why not Nena? I am smarter, she hissed. I am stronger. I deserve this power more than she ever did. She watched Amara disappear into the darkness, then turned her gaze back to the riverbed. The water was already gone. The earth was dry again, as if nothing had happened. But Nena had seen the pot Amara used. She had heard the words, some of them at least. I will return tomorrow night, she decided. I will take what should have been mine from the beginning. And as she walked back to the village, her mind raced with plans. She would have power. She would have glory. And Amara would have nothing. The next morning, Nena stood in the village square, her voice loud and sharp. Elders, people of Oak Arrow, I have something to say. The crowd gathered quickly. Nena's face was serious, her eyes wide with false concern. Last night, she began, I could not sleep, so I went for a walk. And I saw something terrible. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw Amara, Nena continued, at the old riverbed. She was chanting, calling on dark spirits. I saw shadows rising from the ground, unnatural and evil. The villagers murmured in shock. She is using witchcraft, Nena declared. She makes water appear so we will praise her. So we will bow to her. But it is not a blessing, it is a curse. An old woman clutched her chest. A young man shook his head in disbelief. The chief elder frowned deeply. Are you certain of what you saw? Nena placed a hand over her heart. I swear it on my ancestors. The crowd erupted in anger and fear. Summon her, someone shouted. She must answer for this, another cried. The elder raised his staff. Bring Amara before us. Now. And Nena smiled, her plan falling perfectly into place. Amara stood before the elders once more. The entire village surrounded her, their faces hard, their voices demanding. "You have been accused of using dark magic," the chief elder said gravely. "Nena claims she saw you summoning spirits at the riverbed." Amara did not flinch. She simply looked at the ground. "Speak," the elder commanded. "Tell us where your water comes from. Tell us the truth, or you will be banished from this village forever." The crowd pressed closer. Anger filled the air like heat. Amara's lips trembled. She wanted to speak. She wanted to tell them everything. The sacrifice, the covenant, the price she paid every night to keep them alive. But the spirit's warning echoed in her mind. "Speak and you die." So she said nothing. "Answer us," a man shouted. "Confess," a woman screamed. Nena stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The elder's voice grew cold. "If you will not speak, then you leave us no choice." Amara closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "You are banished," the elder declared. "Leave this village by dusk. And never return." Amara knelt slowly, her hands pressed to the earth she had saved. And still she said nothing. As the sun began to set, Amara walked slowly through the village one last time. She carried only a small cloth bag with a few belongings. People turned their backs as she passed. Mothers pulled their children inside. Men spat on the ground. But the cruelest blow came from someone she had trusted. Adiz, her childhood friend, stood in her doorway. Amara stopped and looked at her, hope flickering in her tired eyes. "Adiz," she whispered. "Please. You know me. You know I would never hurt anyone." Adiz's face hardened. She looked away. "I don't know you at all," she said coldly. "Leave, Amara. You are not welcome here." Amara's heart shattered. She nodded slowly and continued walking. The village gate loomed ahead. Beyond it was the wilderness, the forest, the unknown, the danger. Nena watched from a distance, her lips curved in a cruel smile. As Amara stepped through the gate, the villagers closed it behind her with a heavy thud. She was alone now, cast out, forgotten. She walked into the fading light, her shadow stretching long behind her. And the village that she had saved turned its back, never knowing the truth. That night, Nena could barely contain her excitement. She waited until the moon was high, then crept silently toward Amara's abandoned compound. Inside, she searched frantically until she found it, the clay pot sitting quietly in the corner. "Perfect," she whispered, lifting it carefully. She tucked it under her arm and hurried toward the old forest. Her heart raced, not with fear but with ambition. When she reached the dry riverbed, she placed the pot on the ground just as she had seen Amara do. She knelt. She closed her eyes. And she began to chant. At first, the words felt awkward on her tongue. She did not know their meaning. She did not understand their weight. But she repeated them louder, more confidently. "I command you, spirit," she shouted. "Bring me water. Bring me power. I deserve it more than that weak woman ever did." The wind began to stir. Nena grinned. "Yes," she hissed. "Come to me." The earth trembled. But this time it did not tremble gently. It split open with a violent crack. The ground beneath Nena's knees shook so hard she nearly fell. And from the depths something rose. Not water. Something else. The shadow that emerged was not like before. It was larger, darker, and filled with rage. The air turned ice cold. Nena's breath came out in clouds. Her hands began to shake. The spirit took shape. Tall, formless, but undeniably present. Its voice was like grinding stone. "Who dares summon me with greed in their heart?" Nena scrambled backward, her confidence crumbling. I only want what is fair. I only want." "Silence." The word struck her like a physical blow. She fell to the ground, gasping. The spirit loomed over her, its presence suffocating. "The covenant was made in love," it said slowly. It was sealed with sacrifice. You bring neither. Nena's voice cracked. Please, I will ask you one question, the spirit interrupted. Answer truthfully, and I may show mercy. Lie, and you will face judgment. Nena nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face. The spirit's voice echoed through the night. Why do you seek this power? Nena's mind raced. She thought of all the right answers, to help the village, to save the people, to serve with humility. But fear made her foolish. And greed made her honest. I want them to see me. Nena shouted, her voice shaking. I want them to praise me, to bow to me. I want to be greater than Amara ever was. The words hung in the air like poison. The spirit was silent. Then, slowly it began to laugh. The sound was horrible, deep, mocking, filled with contempt. You seek glory, it said. You seek power without price. You seek water, but offer nothing in return. Nena's face went pale. I didn't mean. You meant every word. The spirit's form expanded, filling the entire riverbed with darkness. The covenant is sacred, it continued. It is not a tool for the selfish. It is not a prize for the proud. Nena tried to stand, but her legs would not obey. Please, she begged. I'm sorry. Leave. I'll never come back. The spirit leaned closer, its voice dropping to a whisper that somehow filled the entire forest. You wanted power, Nena. Let me show you what power truly costs. The clay pot at her feet began to shake. And then the water came. But it was not the cool, clear water Amara had brought to the village. It was boiling. The pot filled rapidly with scalding steam. Nena reached out instinctively to steady it, and the moment her hands touched the clay, she screamed. The heat seared her palms. Her skin blistered instantly. She fell backward, clutching her hands to her chest, sobbing in agony. Stop. Please stop, she wailed. The spirit's voice was cold. You wanted what Amara had. Now you understand the smallest fraction of what she endured. Nena writhed on the ground, tears streaming down her face. Her hands were red and raw, the pain unbearable. In the distance, voices rose. Villagers, woken by her screams, were coming. The spirit began to fade, but its final words echoed clearly. You are marked, Nena. Marked by greed. Marked by envy. And the mark will follow you forever. As the first villagers arrived with torches, they found Nena collapsed on the ground, her hands burned, her face twisted in pain. And beside her, the clay pot sat empty and cold. But the truth was about to be revealed. The villagers surrounded Nena, shocked and confused. The chief elder stepped forward, his face grave. What happened here? He demanded. Nena could barely speak through her sobs. The spirit, it burned me, I only wanted. Before she could finish, the air grew heavy again. The villagers stepped back in fear. And the spirit rose once more. But this time it did not come in anger. Came in judgment. Its voice boomed across the riverbed, loud enough for all to hear. People of Okero, you cast out the one who saved you. Gasps filled the crowd. For years, Amara came to this place. She called upon me not for wealth, not for glory, but to give you life. The elder's staff slipped from his hand. Every drop of water she carried cost her. Her strength, her youth, her very soul. And she bore it in silence, because the covenant forbade her to speak. The crowd fell to their knees, horror and shame washing over them. You accused her of darkness, the spirit continued. But she was light. You feared her, but she loved you. Tears streamed down the faces of the villagers. And this one, the spirit said, turning toward Nena, sought to steal what was never hers. She wanted power without sacrifice, glory without pain. Nena wept, broken and humiliated. Now you know the truth. The spirit's form began to fade, but before it disappeared completely, it spoke one last command. Bring Amara back. Now. The villagers scattered in every direction, searching desperately. They called her name into the darkness, their voices filled with regret. Finally they found her, collapsed beneath a tree at the forest's edge. Her body was weak, her breathing shallow. The years of sacrifice had finally taken their toll. They carried her gently back to the village, weeping as they walked. When they laid her in the center of the square, the chief elder knelt beside her. "Amara," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Forgive us. Please." Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at the faces around her, faces that had cursed her, that had cast her out. "I never blamed you," she whispered. "I only wanted you to live." And then her eyes closed again. Her breathing slowed. The villagers cried out in anguish. "Please don't let her die," someone shouted. The spirit's voice returned, softer now, but still powerful. "She has given everything. Now you must choose." The crowd looked up, confused and afraid. "Will you let her fade? Or will you give something in return?" The spirit's question hung in the air like a storm cloud. "You wanted water without cost," it said. "You wanted blessing without sacrifice. But that is not how life works." The chief elder stood, his voice trembling. "What must we do?" "Give what she gave," the spirit replied. "Not water, not wealth, but something far more precious." The villagers looked at one another, uncertain. "Your pride," the spirit said. "Your comfort, your selfishness. Lay it down and she will live. Hold on to it and she will die." Silence fell over the square. Then, slowly, one by one, the villagers began to kneel. Adiz stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "I turned my back on her. I called her a stranger. Forgive me." A mother came next, holding her child. "My daughter drinks because of Amara. I owe her my baby's life." The young man who had collapsed in the forest stepped forward, still shaking. "I followed her in secret. I doubted her. But she never stopped giving." More villagers came, confessing their envy, their suspicion, their betrayal. And as they spoke, something began to change. The air grew lighter. The ground beneath them trembled, not with fear but with power. The spirit's voice softened. "This is sacrifice. This is love." The villagers continued to speak, their voices mixing into a chorus of repentance. "We were wrong," they said together. "We were blind. We were cruel." The spirit's form began to shimmer, becoming less dark, more like light. "You have chosen well," it said. "Unity is stronger than pride. Love is greater than fear." As the villagers knelt, the spirit reached down and touched Amara's chest. A warm glow spread from the point of contact, covering her entire body. Her breathing deepened. Color returned to her face. "She gave her strength," the spirit said. "Now you return it." The villagers felt a strange warmth in their own chests, not painful but humbling. It was as if something heavy was being lifted from each of them. Nena, still kneeling at the edge of the crowd, felt it too. But for her it was different. It burned with shame. "Your sacrifice is accepted," the spirit declared. "And because you have chosen love, I will give you a gift." The ground beneath the village began to tremble. But this time it was not frightening. It was a promise. The spirit rose higher, its form dissolving into 1,000 shimmering lights. The lights floated upward like stars, then spread across the sky. And then they fell. Not as light but as rain. Cool, fresh, pure rain. It poured down on the village, soaking the dry earth, filling the empty wells, washing away the dust. The villagers looked up in wonder, their faces wet with tears and rainfall. Amara's eyes opened fully now. She sat up slowly, strength returning to her limbs. Her skin, once lined and weary, began to smooth. Her hair regained its shine. The years the covenant had stolen were being restored. She looked around at the people who had cast her out, now weeping with joy and shame. "You are free," the spirit's voice echoed from the rain. "The covenant is fulfilled. You need sacrifice no more, Amara. You have given enough." Amara smiled, tears mixing with the rain on her face. The rivers began to flow again. The crops turned green. The land, which had been dying, now burst into life. The village was saved. Not by power, not by magic, but by sacrifice, confession, and the courage to love even when it costs everything. Days passed. The rains continued gently, blessing the land. The village of Okero was transformed. Fields that had been barren now bloomed with crops. Wells overflowed. Children played in streams that ran clear and cold. Amara walked through the village, no longer in secret, no longer in shame. People bowed as she passed, not in fear, but in deep respect. Mothers brought their children to thank her. Elders asked for her wisdom. Young men and women sought her guidance. She had become what they once denied her, a true leader. But Amara remained humble. She did not boast. She did not demand. She simply lived, grateful to be alive, grateful to be free. The chief elder approached her one morning. "Amara," he said softly, "we want to make you our high priestess. We want to honor you properly." Amara smiled gently. "I do not need a title. I only need to see my people thrive." The elder bowed deeply. "You are wise beyond your years." But there was one matter left unfinished. One person who had not yet found peace. And that person was about to face her final judgment. Nena had not spoken since the night of her punishment. Her hands, though healed, still bore faint scars. But the deeper wound was in her heart. She could not look anyone in the eye. She could not join in the celebrations. Shame followed her like a shadow. One evening, the spirit appeared to her alone. "Nena," it said quietly. She fell to her knees, trembling. "Please. I know what I did. I know I was wrong." "Yes," the spirit said. "And now you will carry the consequence." Nena sobbed. "Will you kill me?" "No," the spirit replied. "Death would be mercy. Instead you will live. But you will serve." Nena looked up, confused. "You sought to steal water," the spirit continued. "Now you will carry it. Every day you will fill pots and bring them to those in need. You will serve the village you tried to deceive." Nena's face twisted. "For how long? Until your pride is gone. Until you understand what Amara understood." Nena wanted to argue, but the words died in her throat. "And one more thing," the spirit added. "Water will flee from you when you seek it for yourself. But when you give it to others, it will flow freely." Nena bowed her head, broken but accepting. And so, her punishment became her path to redemption.